Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV's World Edition. And on World Edition, which will soon be part of the Roku TV network, we talk about global affairs, innovation, and continue to navigate through what's been a very turbulent 2 years as we have dealt and continue to deal with the COVID pandemic. I greet you today live from the All America city of Morrisville in North Carolina in the United States of America. And we welcome you from wherever you are in the world or the nation to our wonderful global television show, soon to be on a premier TV network. Now, we kicked off Black History Month yesterday, and so today, from our family to yours at Pod TV, I want to take this opportunity and wish everyone a very happy Lunar New Year, which is celebrated in China and much of Asia, Korea, Vietnam, and Malaysia. And yes, to the Chinese community and the Chinese American community, we wish you a happy Chinese New Year. This holiday has several origins depending on the country, but it's always been a time of celebrating the New Year, seeing loved ones, feasting, and honoring ancestors. It usually falls on the second new moon after the winter solstice and is usually celebrated for multiple days. Lunar New Year in their own unique way with different kinds of foods and traditions that symbolize prosperity, abundance, and togetherness. One such tradition is giving red envelopes known as Hong Bao in Mandarin with money to young children by elders. Celebrants may also wear red or display red and gold decorations, which is why I'm wearing my festive red shirt to celebrate our Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year. And today it is the year of the tiger. Yes, the year of the tiger. And I think the tiger represents brave, strong willed individuals, pioneering, outspoken, enthusiastic, and fearless. And I'll end with this. There's no community in North Carolina that's more fearless, that's more pioneering than our Asian community and our Chinese community, because it is the Chinese New Year. And I want to thank them for their remarkable contributions to North Carolina, the remarkable contributions to the United States, and wherever they are in the world. Because we are beginning the Olympics on Friday, and we'll be watching it here from around the world. But we know that we are grateful for the immigrants from China who have come into our nation and have just transformed it. And we've talked about immigration. So, on that note, we want to wish all of you a happy Lunar New Year as we begin this show. Maybe we'll talk a little about Asian traditions. And today we're going to talk a little bit about continue our discussion of Black History Month, continue our discussion of what's going around the world. And we will talk a little bit about just things that are going on. So we bring with us today Mark Lee from Down Under, Shaquille Latimer, he's not here yet, Sasha Starr,
Yeah, neither
and
one of them
anyone
are
else
here
who might be
yet, but we
joining.
do have the big boss here with us as well. Speaking of the
Oh,
Chinese New Year, I do have a Chinese New Year event that I'll be part of later on and everything. Because as I've told Nick and told other folks, I am part of a audio troupe that comes out of Clubhouse and has got people from around the world, including a gentleman of Japanese American descent, that being the gentleman that goes by the name of IPC, which stands for I Paint Creatures. Of course, he's got a real birth name and everything, but he actually goes more by that moniker and all of that. And he is actually doing a Chinese New Year's celebration in his clubhouse room or our clubhouse room, Club Creatures, later on this afternoon. So that'll be people from around the world. We've done 4 or 5 skits, and I think that I'm in 2 of them. So I've had 2 or 3 practices and rehearsals. So it's all about trying to honor the Chinese tradition and also honor what he talks about, which is something that I know Nick says that we can't have because he says the world's going to end eventually, which is world peace and all of that. So he does say that we're heading toward a calamitous end and all of that kind of stuff, but they are not buying that, and they're trying to celebrate a better world and a more utopian world in that sense. So that is one of the things that I've got going on, and I do have another historical figure that deals with one of our popular industries here and everything in terms of Black History Month, and that would be, we have a very astute furniture market here. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things North Carolina is known for. And there is a person that was considered one of the fathers of that, a gentleman by the name of Thomas Day, who was a freed black man, and he owned and operated one of North Carolina's most successful cabinet shops before the Civil War. And his surviving furniture and architectural woodwork still represent the finest of 19th century craftsmanship and aesthetics. And definitely one of the people at the North Carolina Museum of History, when she did an like an exhibition of his work, called him one of the fathers of the North Carolina furniture industry. So that's the person that I was going to put into the fray in terms of people that folks may not know about and that they should do some research on.
Could you name that name again, please?
Thomas Day.
Okay, great. Now, well, happy Lunar New Year to everyone. Just wanted to begin that message today, since it is Lunar New Year, the year of the tiger, pioneering, enthusiastic, energious, fearless, playful. That sort of describes my colleagues on the show: the fire, the energy. And I'm not sure. Is there a big Chinese community in Canada, Sasha?
Yes, quite substantial, but they are sort of on their own. There is very little interaction between members of Chinese community and others. So they're on their own. They're generally speaking, they're quite successful. Um, for example, in medical schools, law schools, the Chinese dominate the studentship, and in businesses as well, in professions. So they're very successful, but there's really almost no interaction between themselves and the other communities.
Yeah, I mean, we see them very involved in North Carolina, but I guess because I live in Morrisville, there's more Indians, so I don't see as many large gatherings, events. India, there's so many different states in India, but there is in China as well. So maybe I just don't gather in circles during this year time of the year. We also do have many events that we have, but
They
a lot
didn't
of these
do it.
events, yeah, been
They didn't do
virtual.
it last year, but I know I went because I've always wanted to go for many years, and right before COVID really kicked in and everything, there was, and I don't think they had it last year. I'm not sure if they're having it this year. There's a very popular Chinese lamp festival that is over there in
Right.
Cary.
Carrie, I don't know.
Yeah,
Is it
and
over
actually,
or is it still going on? I'm not sure.
well, that's what I'm saying. I know that last year they did not do it
Yeah,
because
they did
of
it this
the
year.
fact that,
They did it this year. Is it
okay,
still going on? Find out if it's going on. I'm not
I'm
sure.
gonna find out if it's still going on because I went like 2 years ago and was thoroughly impressed. The
Yeah,
performances,
I might
the
put that on
lights,
my news.
everything else
I might,
were truly
yeah,
amazing.
I might put that on my newsletter. Find out if that's going on.
I am
Nick, any
putting
thoughts about Chinese New Year? I mean, we have a lot of Asians that listen to this show. Um, Here, it's just any thoughts as the year of the tiger. You got a good year
They're going to
planned?
take over. They're going to take over the world. I would think you guys all need to learn Mandarin very quickly because they're gunning to be the #1 world's superpower, and military, and also economic, and culturally, and everything. So, good news is I like Chinese food. Bad news is I don't speak Mandarin. So
Yeah,
get ready because over there, like I said, I do go to the website Understanding China. I'm going to give it a plug here because Americans have no clue how much they really look at us. Um, it's actually not a website; it's a Facebook group. Okay, so you have to be a member of Facebook to go to this group, and they have about 123,000 active people. So it's I've not beamed any of our shows into it yet. Part of the reason why I'm not sure if they'll accept our shows, China is it's a different cat. If you say it's a tiger, tigers are a different cat. I'm not sure if the street is a two-way street or it's a one-way street. So it's something you got to be really um, I don't know. It's something you really have to look at because they do have a large population. They have a very fast growing GDP. They're very interested in other countries. They know more about our country than a lot of people in our country know about. The history and everything about the U.S. and they want to be #1. There's absolutely no question. If you go to the site, this is a Facebook group site, and you join it, you will see that they want to be number one and they want the United States to be number 2, 3, 4. They don't really care. Okay. And it's like an eye awakening experience because the people over here are asleep at the wheel of the Chinese dragon, really asleep at the wheel. So somewhere along the line, we need to have a wake up call, because if you go look at it, they want to beat us in education. And they use the word, they want to beat you in education. They want to beat you economically. They want to beat you every possible way. Okay. And how bad the culture of the West is. Propaganda, imperialist. And then they put out some really good stuff. In other words, you know, I know Shaquille isn't here, but I wanted to beat him up, but everybody keeps talking, so I wasn't able to bring out the fact that they brought this out, not me. And then I researched it was true. They had Aborigines in Australia, and here's how the Australians dealt with the Aborigines. They went out and shot them just like you'd shoot deer. Okay. And I was going, are you kidding me? So I went and did a fact check, and that's how they dealt with the Aborigines, you know? And the Chinese were the ones that pointed this out to me. I was going like, really? Okay. See, I didn't know that. So they even look at Australian history. Very interesting to watch this. I think you're going to see in the next 10 years a takeover, basically, of the world first position is not going to be the United States anymore. It's going to be China. Okay,
we've been saying that for a while, though, because I mean, a lot of our
we're talking
about Black History Month, and a lot of the civil rights leaders actually did look at some of the Marxist philosophies, not all of them, but some of them, as a thing that they admired for whatever reasons and everything. Definitely the Black Panthers and some of the other ones, even Malcolm X looked at some of the things that Mao Zedong did, and looked at some of the things that some of the other Chinese leaders did in the sense of in their mindset, maybe having a better attitude toward people than, say, the capitalist viewpoint and things of that nature. Now, you know, as I've grown.
It's a definite maybe. See, see what they do is they accuse the West of propaganda, then they have their own cover-ups that they just ignore, Mark. But
yes.
I don't know why we bother with Black History Month, because the next 10 years it's going to be Chinese History Month. I mean,
there is an Asian American. Well, there is an Asian American.
Yeah, but Asian American also, you know, Steve, it includes the Indian Americans, which are totally different than the Chinese Americans. You got two different cats there.
So, well, first of all, one of the topics I want to talk about today, you know, we're going to talk about inflation and supply chain disruptions, but this whole notion of normalcy, which I talked about on PBS last week, of why Americans don't feel more, they wanted normalcy when Biden took over the presidency, and with inflation, with supply chain distributions, paying more, you know, for childcare, worker shortages, you know, we just feel like people, and you know, then you got the foreign policy quagmires, you know, Afghanistan, Russian invasion of Ukraine. It goes on and on. But before we get there,
Steve, what exactly, and I'm sorry you brought it up and you said that you were going to talk about it. What exactly does normalcy mean in these contexts and everything? The reason I'm asking is because you ask some people about normalcy, they will say that, you know, they want like a return back to the good old days, and the good old days could be seen as the 50s and the 60s, and I don't know if they were all that good for everybody and everything. So I was wondering,
let me start the conversation there, and then the second thing, we're going to talk about Lebanon, and we got Sasha Starr, who, by the way, hosts Modern Investing with Sasha and Chess Stars. But Lebanon's economy is doing very bad, so I'd like to talk about that because never saw that coming. Inflation's at over 300%. Stock out shortages. I mean, the economy is a disaster. But let's get to normalcy. So I think when we say normalcy, when Biden came in on January 6th, before he was sworn in as our president, there was an insurrection on the Capitol, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Over 500,000 Americans are dead. We're just rolling out the vaccine, right? We've got conspiracy theories going on that the election was rigged. It wasn't real. And while we're doing this, we have people just concerned, oh my God, am I going to get sick? Am I going to die? I've got lockdowns. I can't, virtual school, which wasn't normal. Everything was just turned upside down. I remember. So, for me, let's roll the clock back 2 years. all of us, right? And say to ourselves, okay, what was life like 2 years ago, right? Well, okay. So 2 years ago, I would get up in the morning and I would drive to my office. I would have lunch, work out at lunch, come back in the afternoon, you know, maybe leave early to take my son to tennis practice, come back, go to a city council meeting. And then I actually would enjoy coming home where the home would be my escape, right? Now, in a 2 years later, I start my day at 5 in the morning, working from my desk, getting ready for this show, doing my emails, doing my job. I've already worked 4 hours today, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning or 10:15, right? Now, but what have I gained? And I'm going to stop here. I spent more time with my wife in the last 2 years than I did in 9 or 10. More with my son, who's still here. My daughter's on a gap year, but she's in college. Um, I'm reading more. I'm more productive at work because I'm focused. I'm not spending so much time driving back, right? But my eyes are tired, and sometimes I do feel like the walls are closing in. Sasha Star, I'm going to go to you. So I'm torn. In some ways, I feel like I'm better. I'm making more money. Okay. I'm healthier because I'm fitter, but my eyes are hurting. And some days I feel like the walls are coming in. So, Sasha, am I normal here, or are we all feeling sort of conflicting emotions?
What irritates me more than anything else, it's inability to travel normally, or for
Yeah.
me, otherwise. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost 2 years since we
Yes.
came from Latin America cruise, and that's the end of story. I've never been anywhere else in the last 2 years, and I'm not even planning the
Yeah.
next trip because I don't know when and where and so on. I'm just flabbergasted by that, and this is really a huge negative story with this COVID situation or so on. Other than that. I I don't feel really much different from what I used to do because I love to read, listen to music. The ambience at home is great to me. That's what I get used to. So really, I don't have any problems with anything but lack of traveling.
Yeah,
Completely.
I miss the traveling, and sometimes I feel like I have to get out of the house and break it up because if I'm home all day, normally that was like my thing. I can't wait to get home. But when you're home all day, there's that feeling at the end of the day. What am I looking forward to, right? We'll go to you, Mark, and then Nick. What was normal to you, and what do you feel like now? What do you
No, I
think
mean
normal
that.
is?
No, that's what I was wondering about everything because, like, definitely what Sasha just said about 2.5, 2 years ago, and maybe a little bit less, a little bit more than that, like maybe a week or two before that, I was at the beach because I was at the beach with my family, and we were doing the whole beach trip, and that was right before the pandemic started. And all along those lines, that they did go this year. I had some other schedule conflicts, so I did not make it. But the year before that, I was in Las Vegas, and the year before that, I was on a cruise. So, like I said, none of that has happened recently, and I was actually visiting a very close friend and everything. And so it's probably been like, yeah, at least 3 or 4 years since I've done any major trips. And I also like going on trips as well, even if they're up and down the East Coast. And definitely there's been less of that, and definitely less of the cruise and foreign kind of trips that can exist as well. So there's that, and then there's been less getting out and about. Yes, my friends in the music game and the theater game are starting to do performances once again, so I am hoping to get out to some of those. But there was a time frame that none of that was happening, so there was definitely something that I was missing, and I'm starting to try to get out and do more of over the next several weeks, and hopefully that will be a return to normal and all of that. And then you mentioned jobs. Yeah, about 2 years ago, the job was partially at the home front, but it was also partially at a location, and I actually enjoyed it going to that location, having camaraderie and that companionship with friends and acquaintances there. Having some of that coffee. What do they call it? Water cooler talk and other kind of things that are going on in that regards, and that was definitely some things that were happening that you don't have as much of. I am starting to see people starting to, I don't know, maybe Nick has observed this as well, but when the pandemic first started, there was kind of a isolationist view, for lack of a better term, and everything, meaning that everybody was kind of in their own individual bubbles, meaning that they were in their own homes, their own environments, whether that was with a wife or a significant other or things along those lines. But what I have noticed is that as more and more people are getting protected and definitely having more other vaccines, that bubble is growing a little bit. Like I just this weekend was cat sitting for my upstairs neighbors and all of that. So that's what I meant when I said the bubble is growing. People are talking to each other that are in the close proximity to each other, and the bubble is expanding a little bit because people are able to relate to each other and know who's been protected, not protected, and willing to expand their bubble a little bit. At least that's what I've observed. What do you guys think?
I have thoughts. Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that. Well, I think it's more like what Sasha was saying. In other words, the travel is down. Now, in my younger days, I was on the road for a week every other week. So I went through all the cities in the country. Since then, I put all my business on the internet, so I don't travel as much anyway, but I still traveled, went to Italy, Switzerland, went to Greece, went to Amsterdam, just got back from New York. And the real problem is traveling. In other words, you have the Vax card, you have the mask, you have events that cancel, you have airlines that go out of business, so you have to redo your airlines. So it's become quite a hassle. So I've just decided to wait this thing out, because here's my opinion what's going to happen with COVID. You're either going to be infected or you're going to have the vaccine, one or the other. And right now we're seeing that with this big infection rate that's going on COVID-19. In other words, there's a lot of people that are catching this as we speak. I think they said the rates are up to like 100,000 a day, some crazy number like that. I mean, COVID-19 is out there just everywhere. But even in New York, they said that the rates have gone down 50%. Why? Because once everybody is vaccinated and or everybody has it and build up immune system in a different way, the virus has nowhere to spread. So the pandemic should theoretically end if it doesn't mutate again. And so the thing is, but rather than say, I was going to book a trip to Spain in October, I just canceled it. I was going, with people's craziness out there resisting the information that science gives us, or twisting it to their own benefit, like this guy, who's his name, Joe Rogan. We beat up this guy for a little bit because he got beat up pretty bad, where people just quit because he was just, the guy doesn't know jack and about anything, and yet he's got a huge following. Let me give you his name. Honestly, I'm going to have to admit I've never listened to this guy ever. Okay, so all I'm doing is getting what they call hearsay, third-party information about this guy. All right, but the third-party information I get about this guy, he's horrible. Yet people listen to him, uneducated, just a guy out there randomly talking. Hey, it's like us, right? The thing is, I just go.
Yeah, but at least we try to have some more
concrete
conversation.
We're going to have, I think we're going to have this on Media Monday. I don't know if you heard about this, Mark. There's a lady on The View called Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah, okay. Whoopi.
Now, so Whoopi Goldberg got a 2-week suspension from The View. All right. I'm going, Lord, what did she say that was so bad? Okay, listen to this. She said that the Holocaust is created because people are bad to other people. All right. And go on further.
She said what?
Okay, listen to this one. She said the Holocaust took place because people are bad to other people. That was her rational descendende, as to say, reason for a decision.
So basically, let me make sure that I understand this. So basically, she said that the Holocaust is the result of evil people being evil. Is basically what that translates to, which is what anybody in any religious group pretty much says in general.
I know that, but let me tell you what happened. The powers that be, and I know Kim beamed in and off, and she's going to be working with Flix, which is a subsidiary of Viacom CBS. Okay, and I think Whoopi's on CBS, but I'm not sure. All right, but this was a 2-week suspension, and do you know why? She did not, and this is where Shaquille would really love it. She did not put in it was really racism. Okay.
Well,
And
there was a story yesterday. You'll love this one as well because I was watching and we actually aired the show because it's one of our newer shows called Interludes. And Mr. Womble, who is the producer of that show,
yeah,
had brought up the fact that there
Interlude
is
is pretty good.
there is a coach that is actually filing a class action lawsuit because he did not get the job that he wanted, and his name
Yeah,
is Flores.
Flores. Yeah, right.
And apparently he did not
I
get the
saw
job, and there is but apparently part of the problem that happened is that, well, a couple of things. One, that they require that they be a certain amount of minority applicants, which I
Yeah,
think before that's definitely within a fair
I didn't go through this,
to
but
be
by the way,
applied for the job.
yeah,
And the other thing that was kind of confusing and everything was apparently the person that did get the job was also named Brian. So there's a
right.
case of like whether this
Okay,
person,
yeah,
Bill
I'll
Bishop,
fill the viewers in on
like
this.
Brian.
That was a really good thing. But see, the problem I have with Whoopi is the thought police. Remember Orwellian 1984? She's not thinking the way CBS Viacom wants you to think. She's not saying what CBS wants you to say, which is racism. Hence, because she's not thinking the way they want, they suspend her for 2 weeks. And that's going to be the subject of, I think,
Yeah, I
our
can't wait to
media
hear
Monday.
how we go.
Why was she suspended though? I don't understand.
Because she said the Holocaust is basically people not liking other people or people being out of control. In other words, oppressing other people. In other words, she did in a Venn diagram, a larger diagram than the smaller part. But
Right,
here's
in
the
other
problem.
words-
Here's the problem that the people at CBS, her overlords, had. She did not include racism as the reason. In other words, CBS is pushing a racist agenda. And that's it. In other words, the thing is, I'm going like, and also here's the problem I have, Steve. They don't give people the ability to think or speak. So what they're doing is the CBS people are saying, you must take 2 weeks and start thinking the way we think, do your
Hey,
research
Nick.
the way, or you can't talk. And what they did is they did an absolute cancel culture, and this is purportedly a liberal media. Are you kidding me? And this is what the garbage that the Americans watch. For people around the world, if you think our media is controlled, you're right. And we did the studies on it. 90% of the media in the United States is controlled by 10% of the companies. So everything that you watch is controlled by major media in the United States.
No, that's a known
we're,
fact.
we're,
I mean, in
it's a
radio, it's
known
like
fact.
3 primary networks: Live Nation,
Three networks that
American.
control everything. So the garbage that you're being fed is being synthesized and given out to you. Now let's go to Flores, the NFL guy. I read through that. I was going, what are you talking about? Racism and all such stuff? Because I'm always skeptical. What's the stuff on this? Then here's the facts of the case. This is why lawyers love the facts. And then you look at the law, right? The facts were this. Belichick writes an email congratulating Brian for getting the job.
Yes.
And Brian goes, what? I got the job? And he goes, oh, sorry, it was the other Brian. Then they invited him to the interview, the New York Giants did. Okay. The interview was obviously a complete farce. They had no intention of hiring him. They already hired the other guy, and they clued Belichick in on noticing the hiring of this other Brian. So he walks into the interview almost knowing that he has no chance for the job because they hired somebody else. Then he starts thinking, which is quite logically, why am I being interviewed? He's being interviewed because he's black, and they want to satisfy the Rooney rule of I've got to interview a black coach. So they go like this. Okay, black coach interviewed, black coach, goodbye. Oh, by the way, your interview was a complete farce. We already had hired the other guy before you even walked in the door.
Like I said,
before you even walked in the door, and I'm going like, of course they filed a suit for $100 million, because lawyers, you're not supposed to file a suit unless you have a reasonable basis of the law. And these two, if you gave me those set of facts, Mark, you have a reasonable basis because the interview was a complete farce. Now, obviously, it embarrassed the NFL, but the NFL doesn't care. They're run by a bunch of billionaires who don't give a rat's rear about. It's a monopolistic, not-for-profit. Are you kidding me? Club run by a bunch of billionaires. And I'm not going to mention the racial disparities that exist.
But speaking of billionaires, apparently there's a couple of billionaires that are going for it that used to be with this particular team. I think one is run by Elway and the other run by Mr. Manning or something along those lines and everything. But I think that we personally need to get together with our personal billionaire, or at least he works with billionaires, and to see if IBM TV, International Broadcast Media, cannot buy the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are up for sale.
The
They
Denver
only won a
Broncos.
couple of billion or whatever. I think that Shaquille and Homer Stones should be able to help us find the
So
billions
buy
so we can actually buy the Denver
the
Broncos.
Denver Broncos. Yeah. Well, honestly, part of the reason people don't buy NFL American football teams is they are not very profitable. In other words, it's generally a fairly bad investment. So that's the reason why. On the other side, okay, they give the owners a lot of prestige, a lot of power, and that's the reason they buy them. And they've appreciated over a period of time. They've done quite well over a period of time. So there's pros and cons of becoming an ownership of an NFL football franchise. The other thing is they have this, Mark. They have a monopoly. Now I'm going back to Flores, the coach. Okay, well, I'll just go work for another league. What other league? There is no other league. In other words, the only league out there is the NFL. The other leagues are so oppressed that it's not funny. Why aren't they broken up?
Wait a minute. Well, that comes out to the whole monopoly thing. There is another league. There is another league that exists. My uncle actually plays in that league, and Sasha will be glad to know that it still exists. The Canadian Football League. There is a league in Canada that exists as well.
Yeah, you go play for Canada. And they used to have the XFL, which waxes and wanes in and out. But they also have, they put in special rules. This is how powerful billionaires are. Don't underestimate the power of billionaires. Or today, decabillionaires. Billionaire isn't enough. You got to be a decabillionaire. Okay, they put in certain rules that were not for profit, so you can accumulate assets without having to pay taxes on it. That's a big benefit, by the way. How would you like to make money, but you don't have to pay taxes? Be a not-for-profit. Number two, that they did, they got rid of the antitrust rules relating to them. They had special rules passed in Congress. So here, they're operating with basically free will and abandon through people like Flores is basically a nuisance guy. Okay, can you believe he actually sued us, the NFL? Are you kidding?
Like I said, and they are definitely a monopoly. The NBA is a monopoly.
That's like suing. That's like in the United States.
There's no doubt about that. There used to be other leagues. There used to be even leagues based
there
on
used to be
race.
There used to be the AFL and the NFL. They had two separate leagues.
Right, they merged, and then there used to be leagues based on race. Like in baseball, there used to be the Negro League, and there used to be a whole. There was a time that basketball, even though it's predominantly, as Shaquille pointed out, African American now, there was a time
there used to be
was not the case.
There was an ABA and an NBA. Sports used to be competitive. Now the thing is, sports are dominated by a small group of billionaires, and that's it. And so for people listening around the world, yes, that's how it works around here. If you're a decabillionaire or a billionaire, you're doing okay. If you're a millionaire, you're surviving, and everybody else is trash. I mean, that's
the truth of the matter. Hey, Sasha, I was going to throw it back to him and everything, and Steve. But there used to be, because we've talked about China earlier and everything, there used to be this movement. It's a national movement. It's an international movement. Apparently, before the pandemic, it was gaining momentum in China. Unfortunately, unlike here, the Chinese decided to basically squash it and basically say, I don't care about the fact that y'all want rights and that you want rights in your country and all of that, even though there were some prominent academics, journalists, activists, just like they were here, that were accused of various forms of sexual misconduct. Apparently, the Chinese were like, that's okay. We're just going to squash the laws and everything, because apparently Chinese law prohibits sexual harassment, but they don't really do that much about it and everything. So I was just wondering your thoughts about the Me Too movement, because apparently there used to be a very popular worldwide movement, including in China, and apparently women there even face widespread discrimination in the job market. And apparently, even though they've got a whole sex ratio imbalance and a imbalance around the pace rates and a bunch of other things. And of course, they used to have a 1-child policy, and now I think they've got a 2-child policy. But I was just wondering your thoughts, because I know here it becomes very much of an issue, stays in the news. There, I think that they just kind of like squash it in the news.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, the media, like you all said, it's all determined on what they want to cover. Right. And
they set the agenda. See, Steve, that's a very, very funny thing that is not brought up in the media at all. Is you have to imagine, like I do watch CBS in the morning. They set the agenda. Okay, so what I'm going to listen to is set up by the media. And if they set this agenda, if this is what they want to talk about Ukraine, then in my brain, it's all about Ukraine. If they set the agenda and they want to talk about COVID, it's all about COVID. And then they slant everything really toward their viewpoints. And you can listen, if you listen very carefully, you can see how you're actually being manipulated by the media to think along their lines. So today, you don't get facts from the media, you get commentators. Every one of them is a commentator. And they'll always preface something like, well, this is extremely bad because of X, and then they'll put their own opinion in. So really, we're being fed fast food garbage from the basically the top 10%. In other words, 90% of stuff that we listen to is garbage.
Fast food garbage. I don't eat a lot of fast food anymore.
Well, you know, in the evenings, the programming is also fast food garbage. I mean, and it's all. And then we talk about being a moral superior. This is what gets me about Uncle Joe. We're going to hold the diplomats back because China is messing around with the Jaegers or something like that. Yet we do that stuff all the time. Why? So why did he do it? It was only to do a political play. I think what Joe did was totally wrong. In other words, what he did was totally wrong. He's taking a sport, the Olympics, which is supposed to bring people together in a non-confrontatory, a non-adversarial relationship, and hopefully build relationships. And I'm talking about Joe Biden, injected politics into it, which he shouldn't have done.
Before we go to let's talk a few minutes about Olympics. But before we do that, Lebanon. What is going on, Sasha? Have you been hearing about what's going on in Lebanon? Why the World Bank has now and the IMF has said that they're one of the worst economies in the world, real crisis. I don't know what economically caused this situation to occur.
Why would you believe, or anybody, that Lebanon is a prosperous and great country with a great economics and everybody's happy there?
But things were going quite well a few years ago.
Many, many years ago. We are talking about probably 60s, 70s, and nothing great happened there since. It was overrun by Hezbollah, Iranian revolutionaries or democratic warriors or whatever they are. And Israel invaded a few times to clean up things there. And there's nothing great really happening there. And I don't expect anything great happen there in the next probably 65 years or so.
Well, it sounds like the stock is down on Lebanon. I guess we're not.
Sounds like the stock is down on Lebanon, but I was wondering. You mentioned Israel, and Israel has definitely invaded a couple of times Lebanon and everything. But they have a neighbor to, I guess it's one side of theirs that's supposed to be of similar style and everything, which is Syria. So I was wondering, will Syria come and bail out Lebanon, or are they just going to let Lebanon squander and just go down the avenue or the rabbit hole of not succeeding as you have described them as not doing and everything? So is there any of these other adjacent countries that are going to come to their aid or not? What are your opinions, Sasha?
My opinion is that whatever happened in Syria depends on Russia. And whatever Russia will do in Syria depends on China. China rules. You are absolutely right.
At the end of the day, we're going to be speaking Mandarin. But by the way, this afternoon at 3:00 on our network is going to be Weed Wednesday. But very important, for the first time, we're not going to have just Tommy Chong on live. We're actually going to have Cheech and Chong. Both of them are going to be on our network in the famous movie Cheech and Chong from the 60s. This is our counterculture show.
So, good afternoon, everybody. It's Jeff Viken, Hemp Hooray, and we are having a great Weed Wednesday show this week on February 2nd at 12 Pacific. So don't forget, we're going to have Cheech and Chong. And watch our replay and share it with everybody. They're going to talk about their NFT drop with homies in Dreamland. See you then. We're on P.O.D. TV. Thank you so much, P.O.D. TV, and Hemp Hooray.
I've been waiting all day to light this place.
Hey Nick, you know that place that
Yeah.
we go to everything, and we go to them locally. You're always proud of it, called Al Jazeera. I was just looking up
Oh
an
yeah,
article
Al
from
Jazeera.
a
Yeah.
couple of days ago about Al Jazeera, and apparently Lebanon said that they will not hand over the Hezbollah weapons, and that's what the country foreign minister said ahead of a meeting with his Gulf Arab counterparts, because apparently they're trying to mend ties because they don't want to be. I guess they want to be prepared for whatever invasion
Yeah.
is coming around and everything, because apparently Saudi Arabia and its allies has suspended diplomatic ties with Lebanon, which could definitely
Oh,
cause a problem with your economy. And to come
yeah.
back to Steve's point and everything, after the airing of comments by the then information minister, George Cordier, who criticized the government of Saudi Arabia and their led military intervention into Yemen. So apparently, this whole thing is revolving around geopolitical conversations, and that could be part of the reason of them being in deep troubles. And by the way, apparently we're going to give them some more money because there is a plan, according to this article, that the U.S. plans to reroute 67 million in aid toward Lebanon's armed forces. So we're going to give them $67 million in money.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, of course, it's all about the money. But Al Jazeera has actually been very good to us. They take all of our programming. The chess people, they watch chess, they watch everything. So our rebroadcast on Al Jazeera has been really very successful. I can't say the same thing about our overlords in America, like CNN and Fox. They no. But yeah, because remember, they're there for themselves, so they won't take our programming there, and even the BBC. But Al Jazeera will, which is very interesting. But back to Cheech and Chong. See, here's the problem with Cheech and Chong. That generation is actually a generation even ahead of me that used to watch Cheech and Chong. So all those hippies that you see there are now gray-haired hippies
Yes.
because they're just older people, and that whole generation of the '60s is basically now they're past their 60s, they're in their 70s and 80s, so it's really just a whole different world that people don't even know about in the '60s, and that all dealt with the Vietnam War. And let me tell you something, though. Here's what the Chinese stick in our face all the time is the Vietnam War. In other words,
Yeah,
they're
they
like,
love sticking the
what do
Vietnam
you
War in
got?
our face.
And there's a
How,
great
how can
special on
how can
Steve.
America have any moral authority when you look at the Vietnam War? And they're really hard to argue with. That some of the stuff that the U.S. has done. So the Chinese are saying, no, we don't do any of that stuff. We're clean. We're wonderful. We're great people.
But speaking of wars, apparently, and I'd love to know what when we talked about it before, what Sasha thinks about this. But apparently, earlier today, like maybe close to midnight, the U.S. decided that it was going to send 3,000 more troops to NATO's eastern flank. So apparently, we're sending more and more troops over there to deal with the whole Russia-Ukraine
Yeah.
situation as well. So, Sasha, I think you said that we probably don't need to be dabbling in other people's businesses and things of that nature. But what do you think about the fact of us sending some more troops over there? Because apparently earlier today, we decided to send 3,000 more troops to NATO's eastern flank, which would be that flank that's over there closer to Russia and Ukraine and the whole thing that's going on over there.
All the answer is just one word. It's China. What's happened recently is, remember when there was uprising of some kind in Kazakhstan? So Russia sent its own troops and few other countries which have in Russian ODKB, but I don't know how it translates in English. It's kind of an organization of this Russia plus some Asia countries such as Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, what is there? Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. Maybe I forgot somebody.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah. So that's organization. So that was the reason why it's not Russia invaded Kazakhstan. It was all organization. And once uprising was stopped or so on, all of a sudden in one day, everybody was gone, especially Russia. Whoever they moved some contingent there. It's all was gone in one day. Why? China said so. And what's happened after that in the last couple of days? China now heads organization of all the same countries, and they have big meetings, I think yesterday and today, follow up. All these countries, but no Russia. Russia was not invited there. So the sphere of influence of all these Asia republics is now going to China by default. Russia is just not there. Russia has not been invited there. So if Russia is not doing that great with China and all those Asia countries, it's not doing with the West not so well, with US or NATO or Europe or Ukraine or anywhere else. So what is Russia going to do about all that? It's a complete disaster of foreign policies of Putin. And now I don't know even how he can save his face and explain really what's going on in the West, in the East, and elsewhere.
There's a great movie on Netflix that you should see. It's called Munich. It's all about Neville Chamberlain and what he did to try to appease Hitler. Is he just turned over the Sudetenland and Czechoslovakia? In other words, it's yours, right? You know who wasn't present at the meeting was Czechoslovakia. Okay, so it's definitely a good movie about how appeasement doesn't work.
Yeah, he was really weak. I mean, they that's the old joke in Britain, Neville Chamberlain. Then you came in
the
Churchill.
thing is, they lambast him. Oh, he's weak. He give him. But if you look at the zeitgeist at that time, that they just got off of World War I, and he was trying to actually stop World War II. So in his brain, he was thinking, well, if we negotiate and we're peaceful, this guy's going to go away. We'll just give him the Sudetenland. Oh, by the way, Czechoslovakia don't even bother to show up. I think when it comes to Ukraine, we should really be negotiating with China on Ukraine.
Yeah, and
because
Biden,
China has a lot more influence.
Putin is saying that we're failing in diplomacy, and now he's calling our bluff on it.
He's right. We should be setting up a meeting with Xi Jinping immediately on what we want to do with the Ukraine.
Meanwhile,
he's the guy that has more influence over the Ukraine than that guy Putin.
President Biden is committed.
China is the key to this conflict. 100%.
Yeah. I'm going to get the book 2034, which is about the Third World War fiction book. Sounds like a good read. And while we're talking about the foreign policy challenges, still waiting to see what's going to happen with Ukraine. President Biden is still confirming or sticking to his guns that he will make his nominee to the court by the end of this month, and that it will. He is saying that it will be a black woman. Of course, Shaquille Latimer and others disagree, but it is what it is. And now the question becomes, how are they going to get a nominee through? Will the Republicans support him? This is it. I mean, I think he has appointed more federal judges to the bench than previous presidents. But at the end of the day, my theory is this. I just feel like there was such a high expectation when he came in, and July was when everything went south for President Biden. Afghanistan, Omicron, Delta, Omicron, inflation, now the pending invasion of Ukraine, and then while he's doing this, his inability to get voting rights legislation through and the Build Back Better now sort of has him in gridlock. So he's got. How many raise your hands if you think the Democrats are going to win this year in the election?
No,
not a chance.
Not happening.
Also, see, here's the problem, Steve, because you're a Democrat and you hang around the Democratic Party.
I hang around Republicans too.
Well, you should need to hang around more of them, because the thing is, here's the real problem. You end up with this thing called groupthink. See, when you say high expectations, okay, other than the Democrats, no one had high expectations for Joe. Most of the people voted against Trump. I mean, the reason he's sitting in office isn't because Joe's great. It's because Trump was a horse's spittoon, and they just didn't want to listen to the guy anymore. Not to mention he boggled COVID-19, which I think if he didn't boggle that, he would be president. If COVID-19 didn't come into he would be reelected. I really think he would have been reelected.
But hold on a second, Nick, a couple of things. One, is this anything new? Because I'm thinking that the last, and I know we haven't set a date. I think we're going to try to do it today. Maybe we'll do it Thursday. But if we're going to still have our weekly World's Worst Presidents, is this anything new over the last 20 or 30 years or everything? Because, when I think about even back to Reagan and Carter and back to Bush and definitely Obama and even the Clintons, weren't they really more people voting against whoever they felt was the person that was the previous person. So it seemed like
Right,
it was more
right.
of
Yeah,
a
right.
not so
Yeah.
much voting for their
You're
policies
not
as
voting
voting
for,
against the other person.
yeah, they're not voting for A, they're voting against B,
D,
the
exactly.
incumbent. You see, and the Biden administration was really a vote against Trump more than a vote for Biden. And so the thing is, the high expectations may exist within a small group of the Democratic Party. The rest of the world probably believed he is going to be what he's going to be, which isn't very much. His PR is absolutely horrible. I mean, as much as you hate Trump, his tweets kept his policies in front of the American people. And Biden, if you ask me, what's he doing today for the American people? I don't have a clue. The guy
He's a
doesn't.
showman. Well, I mean, yeah, but he's went back to like we went from having a president. What was really strange was that up until Trump becoming the president, look, when I was in college in the '90s, the president would do the standard press conferences, or if there was
Sure.
a crisis. So
Right.
Bush one did, Bush 41 did Gulf War, Persian Gulf, blah blah blah, State of the Union, whatever, and then then Obama did a little bit more, but not as many. Great communicator. But then you had
Yeah.
Trump that was on every morning and every night, every
Sure.
morning and every night
Yeah.
in 24 hours. And it was like a reality TV show
That's exactly
where,
right.
you wonder, and
That
I
is
think,
totally what it. That is totally what
Yeah.
it
Totally
was.
what it,
That's
what it
totally
was.
what it was.
But he
But
knew how to use the media to keep his base in line all the time. Joe didn't want to be Trump, so he stayed away from it. He could have still embraced it, Steve,
that's why.
but embraced it in a way that was more professional. Okay, in other words, problem with Trump is his tweets are so anti-professional. He could communicate. Joe could communicate every day through tweets a professional thing. Here's what we're doing today in Washington D.C. and be professional, not saying, "Oh, these people blah 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 blah" like that. So
Yeah,
he
I
has the
think he
ability
talks
to
about
communicate.
he talks about the past too much. I mean, when
well,
you
he
bring
does
up,
talk about the past a lot. But Nick,
I mean, he
and this
brought
is
up
something that
Strom Thurmond, not
no,
exactly my. Yeah, you're talking
Strom
about
Thurmond
vote.
is so dead. I mean,
yeah,
that's a dead.
No,
he's
but
so
why would he
gone.
bring up? Why would he bring up Strom Thurmond? I mean, it
Well,
was
yeah.
just
Because,
like,
If
because
when you
he's
will
kind of
be
like
at
a
his age, you will talk
or
about the
or,
past.
or,
You're
or
going
it's
to
like
talk
I'm
about the
pretty
past.
sure.
it's like when they
But
asked Clinton about pot, and he goes, "Well, I didn't inhale." When they asked him about Ukraine, he goes, "Well, it really depends on whether it's an incursion or an invasion." I mean, what the hell is the difference between
I
an
mean,
incursion
it's a
and an
matter of
invasion?
semantics, and he's definitely
Bullshitting,
not the best.
bullshitting.
He's definitely not the best speaker in everything. But I would argue that we have had speakers for a while, and there's actually been a period of time. I mean, Marshall McLuhan talked about it, who was a great scholar and everything. That there have been periods of time where we have had people that were better at being public speakers than others, even in the presidency. And yes, Trump was the master showman. Yeah, I would definitely give him credit for that and everything. But there have been other master showmen in history as well. I would argue that Kennedy was a master showman. I would
Oh
definitely
yeah,
argue that Clinton and Obama were master showmen. We can even go back way back in time because it was a radio day. But
well,
one of the
yeah.
Roosevelts, I believe it was
Well,
FDR, was a
I
master
made
showman
this.
for what he was doing in that
Well,
time
no,
frame. He
and
didn't
that's
have
a
to show his body. He just had to like talk
I
on the
made
radio.
I made that point on PBS last week that the Democrats that have been successful in the modern era have been outsiders that are great communicators.
Right.
So Kennedy and Obama are a perfect example, right? Then Lyndon Johnson was successful largely because he was a Southern, from the South, Texas, and he was able to work with Dixiecrats in his own party to get things done like voting rights legislation. Because at that time there was as much opposition to that. Actually, ironically, there was more Democratic opposition to that than Republican opposition. But he was an okay communicator, but his poll ratings were high. Bill Clinton was an exception. He was from the South, but he was an exceptional communicator. But you look at Joe Biden, he's neither. He's not an effective communicator. He's not from the South, right? And he got in, like Nick said, because of Trump and because of COVID.
Yeah.
Now the question becomes, okay, you always wonder what it would have been like if Dukakis had become president, right? Well, I think we're finding out. Remember Mike Dukakis?
Right.
I mean, he would say, "I'm really angry right now. I'm really angry."
I was not. I don't think Dukakis would have been a good one. That'd be almost like if we had gotten Gary Hart, and I remember covering Gary Hart back in the day and everything, and he tried to run
monkey business, baby.
But that whole monkey business thing, he got himself in trouble with that. I know we're getting ready to wrap up because we've only got a few more minutes. I do want to get to some light news. Well, part of it is not all that light and everything, but it is tied together. And that is, believe it or not, because it's supposed to be 60 today, and I think maybe even 70 tomorrow. But apparently there's a winter storm that's about to hit the U.S. It's going to get like 22 states. It's going to stretch over 2,000 miles over the weekend. So we've had these storms already, I think 3 weekends in a row, and I'm not sure whether it's going to hit North Carolina or not, but it looks like it will. And so that is going to be a 4 weeks in a row. I think it's just only supposed to be ice here, but they are saying that it's going to kind of put a wrinkle in people's travel plans if they are trying to travel and all of that. But the light note that I was going to get ready to get to is that there is a tradition that goes on every year, and it's this whole thing of a groundhog. And Pittsburgh County Field did come out, did see his shadow, and apparently we're stuck with 6 more weeks of winter. So I just want to let folks know, if they were wondering, Phil did see his shadow earlier today and has made the prediction that we've got 6
What
more
is
weeks.
it in a put 20, right?
Pittsburgh County Field.
Better
Okay,
just
and
the
don't forget
Groundhog Day.
that
Yeah,
1
just
o'clock we
Groundhog
will
Day.
have a financial show today. The market is getting back to normalcy. The 2 weeks of separation of investors with their money is done and over. So now we can start normal investing and prosper as usual. Okay, so I'll see you at 1 o'clock on
Yes.
modern
Yeah.
investing.
And at 4 o'clock, we do have our online dinner party, and we do have a young lady that is coming in, and she will be talking about some of the things that we've talked about in the sense of history of definitely Black History Month, as well as just some of her thoughts around some of the things that are going on in the world and all of that. So, and I might have some other guests. And then next week, we're going to have some amazing guests. We've got some authors coming in, as well as one of the premier people involved with Southern Soul, that being
For
Theo.
Black History, on World Edition, we got guests coming in, right?
Yes, we do have blacks
Yeah,
coming
and
into
then
the world,
we're reaching out to Commissioner Jessica Holmes and a couple of
and
other
guys are
leaders.
laughing house.
So I'm going to get ready to close out. I want to thank everyone for being with us on World Edition as we continue to celebrate. First of all, Happy Lunar New Year to everybody and the Asian community, the Chinese New Year, Year of the Tiger. And as we continue our discussion of Black History Month, please send us your ideas of Black leaders that we should be talking about, that should be a part of the conversation, and continue to have a conversation of what we can do to continue to get through a turbulent time in American history. On Friday, tomorrow at 11 a.m., I'll be leaving a little bit early from the show. There will be a huge breaking announcement in Morrisville, North Carolina. And if you're watching around the world, it is a game-changing event. So if you're listening and you're any international media, I would like you to reach out to me because I'd like to speak to the news about this. So, Nick, I might need your help. But this will be breaking news. So on Friday, I'm hoping to have, all I can give you a hint. I will have somebody from maybe a World Federation of Cricket that will be coming. So, Mark, check your email in the afternoon
I will.
because we'll be working to get a major guest on for breaking news. Maybe one of the biggest announcements in the history of Morrisville. So stay tuned for some exciting news tomorrow. So, and it's good news for North Carolina. So game changer. Get out your cricket bats. Let's play some cricket. Hint, hint.
Cricket is known around the world. I mean, that's
Thank you. Yeah, well,
except in Russia. I don't think they play in Russia.
well,
from our family
to yours, we wish you all the best. We'll see you tomorrow morning and again on Friday. Thank you. Be safe wherever you are, and we are honored to host this show as we prepare the countdown to being on Roku TV network March 1st. Thank you.